those are the people I truly serve. The root of all our evil, it begins with the Federal Reserve. Hey, yeah, well, let's go back in time when everybody was so proud of a man.
I'm Tommy Salmons. This is Year Zero. Today, Marc Clair of Lions of Liberty fame joined me. I had Marc on to discuss his spiritual journey, the way we see the Libertarian Party, libertarianism as we see it today, and all sorts of good, interesting topics. Marc, as you know, is an OG podcaster, one of the originals, and he's really laid out a foundation for podcasting and exploring ideas that I think is important. And I appreciate him coming on the show and spending some time with me and being so gracious. I was extremely tired this day. I recorded 3 podcasts and I'd been up since 3 in the morning. So bear with my little garbled mind and how I tried to keep track of the subject matter. But I think you'll enjoy this podcast nonetheless. RyanBunting.com for all of your graphic design needs. Go to RyanBunting.com. Ryan Bunting is a great libertarian and a great anarcho-capitalist. He's also a great graphic designer. He designed my podcast logo and Pete Quinones' podcast logo for Free Man Beyond the Wall. So go to RyanBunting.com for all of your graphic design needs and check out his book, Project Manicore. Thank you, Tom Burton, for the music. And before we get into the show, don't forget, this is the time for the Libertarian Institute Fall Fund Drive. So go over to the Libertarian Institute and donate a few dollars. Help us keep new writers coming into the fold. Help the podcasters keep podcasting and keep our lights on, man. Let's keep that website up and running and all the great work that's going on there at the Libertarian Institute. So go to the libertarianinstitute.org/donate and donate a few bucks. Give us some help. Keep us going. We depend on you. Enjoy the show. Okay, long time in the making. I am here with the man and the legend, Marc Clair, the beginning of the entire libertarian podcast community. What is going on, dude?
What's up, Tommy? Pleasure to be here, man.
Nah, it's been one of those things. I'm like, I want to talk to Marc. I'm kind of intimidated, but I still want to talk to him.
I'm like the least scary person in all of the Liberty universe.
Yeah, I had to listen to like 4 of your episodes leading up to this.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, okay, he's a nice guy. He's just a guy. He puts his pants on one leg at a time.
We all just are. In the end, what are any of us except just some guy trying to do whatever it is we're doing out there?
Whatever it is.
Whatever version of grifting we're trying to do.
Yes.
I see. No one's actually ever accused me of being a grifter, so I'm just going to adopt it myself. So then it's over. Like no one can ever even try.
Well, that's like, it's like Hotep Jesus. He's just like, yeah, I'm a grifter. I'll jump on anything and make me some money.
I mean, aren't we all like shit? Sure. I won't really change what I believe to make money, but I'll do things I believe in and make money off them if I can. Of course. Why wouldn't I?
Yeah. Well,
better than slaving away for some corporation to make money. Why is that? Why that's grifting, like grifting off the back of some, corporate whatever.
It's kind of like me publishing at the Libertarian Institute. It's like, I don't even know if I'm really talking about libertarian things anymore. I'm not even sure if I'm still on that subject anymore.
I feel like about half the institute could probably.
Yeah. So it's like, I love you, Scott. Thank you.
But what's more libertarian than having an open mind in terms of ideas and exploring ideas to the greatest extent possible to try to get at the truth or whatever the closest thing to understanding truth that you can is. So, I mean, to me, if libertarianism really is about liberty, it's also about cognitive liberty. And maybe this is a little thick libertarianism here, but maybe we need a little thicker libertarianism around now. I mean, where there is more to talk about than just non-aggression principle. And now let's just toss that out there, and there's nothing else to say. And if you say anything else besides that, then I don't know. You're a grifter.
I read theory for like 2 years, and I was like, okay, next.
Yeah, I put in about a decade, you know?
Can we move on to something that I can actually do in my daily life? Because I can't do any of this stuff. Like, you know, it's great thought experiments. And so I just started focusing. And that's why I kind of moved to like the more agorist label, which I don't even know if that really explains who I am or what I believe.
No labels do. That's the problem with adopting labels, is that they don't really say who you are or what you're about. They just explain maybe one aspect of that thing, and you might not even fully be on board with what a lot of other people see as that thing, and the other way around, that thing is probably almost definitely not describing the whole of who you are and what you're about.
Yeah, well, and those people that adopt those labels and live them out to the fullest, a lot of times are so one-dimensional and boring that I don't even want to have the conversation with those people.
Yeah, I can feel that.
So it's like, all right, like, where are we going next? Like, what are we talking about? And so I do like episodes like I did with Shane Hazel the other day on fatherhood. You know, it's like somebody's going to get something out of it, you know. Yeah. And I got more feedback on that episode than I have on any other episode I've done. So I was like, well, okay.
I mean, what matters more in life? Lessons about being a good father, or what a libertarian society would do in the event an asteroid was on the way? Like, you know, I mean, there's theory that does. I mean, not that, you know, maybe how we'd handle an asteroid is pretty important. It might be someday, but you know, in terms of our day to day life, like that is way more important, and that's something that I'm kind of realizing with the podcast too. Is I want to have conversations that are important and that like matter to people's lives.
Well, you said we handle an asteroid, which makes me think you're a statist, and I think we should cut this conversation now.
Well, take me back to year -1.
Right. But, yeah, no, one of the things that we've all been kind of contemplating, and I've been trying to put my finger on what it was that got me interested in this subject once again, you know, after years of stagnation and away from church and not really looking at any kind of religion or metaphysical existence. And I think Vin Armani first articulated it, but I think I was thinking about it a little bit prior to him bringing it up. And in 2019, I think it was, I did like 3 or 4 episodes on the religious tenor and language around statism and around the state itself, and how uncomfortable it made me and how I didn't like it. And that really got me contemplating and focusing on why is it these people want kind of this religious fervor around something. And hearing
once you see it that way, it's really hard to unsee it. You know, once you start to see, oh, this is, you know, they're just couched in religious language. These certain rituals are of a religious nature. Once you start to see that out there and you have that filter on, it's like, oh, you start to see it everywhere, whether it's through government or corporations or advertising. I mean, it's something that the most powerful elites in the world all know about because they utilize it and they utilize. So I think once you start to see it, it's really hard to unsee.
It really is, because I've even like found myself at points like having a conversation with somebody and I'll be like, oh wait, is Ron Paul your Jesus? Mm-hmm. You know, like there are times where I stop and I'm like, what are you trying to say to me? Like, where are we going with this conversation now? And
I used to take offense when people would say things like that, but now I look back and I'm like, actually, yeah, he actually was mine. Like that was my religion for a long time, the Ron Paul Revolution.
Yeah. Yeah. And that always bugs me. Like that is one of those conversations I get into. If somebody turns to that fervor of, and it starts sounding extremely fundamentalist, it turns me off. I don't want to be involved in it anymore. I'm like, okay, like whatever you're doing, that's not me, you know?
Because you want to have a conversation. You don't want to be preached to. You don't want to be told what the truth is that you must believe. You want to find the truth through conversations and maybe hearing what other people believe and having them hear what you believe and, you know, seeing where all that leads. But that's why I think like a lot of libertarians, especially like people like me during the Ron Paul Revolution years, we found ourselves like banging our heads against the walls is because we were out there preaching. We were out there preaching a message. We were out there preaching about this guy, preaching about the things he says, but we were preaching. And when you preach to people that aren't looking to be preached to, it can really push them away. So yes, we had a lot of success. You know, a lot of people joined the religion, so to speak, and got excited about it. But when a lot of those people went to go preach to the, I guess the unconverted, you might say, you hit a lot of walls. And I experienced that personally. I mean, I was an evangelist for Ron Paul in 2007, 2008. I put on a shirt and tie. I went knocking door to door in Los Angeles, California, and I couldn't believe when I would bring them my message, and they would agree with things too. A lot of these people said they wanted to end the wars too. They like that. They meant like a couple of things. Yeah, they wanted to decriminalize drugs too. Great. And then they look down and see, oh, he's a Republican. Oh, no, thank you. I'm good. Thank you very much. Because their religion says Republican is bad, no matter what they might agree with. Because it's, and when you look at all this in the religious aspect, now I can look at it, 12 or 13 years later, and it makes more sense to me. Whereas at the time I found it so frustrating because I really just couldn't believe why don't they see it? Like they just spend 10 minutes agreeing with me even, and then they still reject me once they see one thing that doesn't jive with their prior worldview.
Right. Yeah. And I remember reading an article that David Nolan had written, and he specifically said that libertarianism is evangelical. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't know. I don't want to be evangelical. It's like, that was never my idea, And this was after, I guess it was 2018 that I ran into this article, but I think he wrote it in the 90s. And I was writing an article. I was going to have it published at the Libertarian Institute. And when I ran into that, I finished the article, but I just never sent it in to have it published anywhere. I was like, nah, I'm thinking twice about everything now. It just stopped me in my tracks. And luckily I'm in a situation working with the guys I work with at the Institute where it's like, okay, we can all have these conversations and nobody gets overly offended or overly heated because we all know each other are coming from the right place, and we all know each other are looking for a way to find liberty in our life, and some of us are on different pages than others, but that's just the way it goes. That's just the way people's mind works. And we're not advocating, war or murder or anything like that by the state. So it's pretty laid back. But at the same time, it really got me looking back at Christianity. And Matt Erickson turned me onto that Lord of Spirits podcast. And so I ended up going and buying one of these guys' books. It's right here. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the title. It's called The Religion of the Apostles, Orthodox Christianity in the First Century. Ended up starting to listen to a Bible study that one of these guys was doing. And I was like, I never heard this version of Christianity before. Like, this is off the wall. I've never heard it. And so it's intriguing to me. And I've heard you say that there's no such thing as an atheist. And I'm like, yeah, like this is kind of what I've been experiencing and what I've been like struggling in my own mind about over the last few years. So how do we take this idea? Because this is where I'm struggling, and I want to get Mike Meharry on when he's ready to come back on to chat about this some more. About religion and libertarianism, because he's got the Godarchy podcast, and I know that's kind of one of his focuses is how they fit together. But it does seem like, as Adam Patrick has said, libertarianism is Christianity without Christ, and I don't know if that's the way to go, because we've already seen the Tower of Babel play out several thousand times. Do we want to see it again? Yeah,
I mean, for me, I'm very much probably in a similar place where you are in terms of, my thoughts about religion in a more specific way. Like, it's interesting. The relationship between religion and I is pretty interesting because I've always been fascinated by it. And for a long time, I rejected it. I kind of did take like that attitude of, oh, these are just old, silly rituals that people that didn't understand science and this sort of thing used to do to, explain to their people why they should act in a certain way, because they'll never get it unless we tell them it came from the magic sky gods or whatever. So I definitely had a lot of that condescending attitude towards it for a long time.
As somebody who writes fiction, I can see the utilization of personifying a manifestation of nature to inform people on how it works. Yeah. And so it's kind of like, I've always been like, but I've always said, like, I never went full atheist because I've had some experiences in my life that just didn't allow me to move that far. But I've always said, like, the universe is alive, right? Like, everything under our feet is or was alive at some point in time. So there's some life around us that's bigger than us. It's just, what is it? And it never made any sense to me. That was always kind of my point of view.
Yeah, even when I was kind of like more of an atheist and might have even called myself that, I think I was actually more of I kind of am now too. We were talking before the show. Like I before I would call myself like an atheist agnostic. Like I was very skeptical of all religions. I really rejected like tradition and that sort of thing. But I also didn't think I knew the answer. Like I was like, well, I guess I'm open to the fact that any of these could be true, but they're not proving it to me, and I don't think there's any logical way they can get there. So to me, they're just people taking wild guesses and nothing more. So maybe one of their wild guesses is the exact right truth of the nature of reality or what have you. But I assume it probably wasn't, because who are these old people from thousands of years ago? What do they know? And now I kind of would call myself more of like a faithful agnostic, where I still think I don't exactly know the nature of these things, but now I think, well, maybe some of these people that found that certain rituals did work and did build a better civilization and did create better societies and continue to practice them for thousands of years, maybe they're not as stupid as I thought. Maybe I need to give them a little more credit. And at the end of the day, whether it is a mythology, whether there's a mythology that's sort of describing reality and describing how your life works, how to live a good life, whether that's just completely made up or whether it's, whether it is based on some actual things that really happened. And, either way, if they describe reality appropriately and they actually do move people to act in a better way, I don't know if we should be rejecting that, especially when trying it the other way of just telling people not to hurt each other and not to take their stuff over and over and over doesn't really seem to do much of anything in terms of, persuading the culture en masse. Anyway, all of us have probably influenced people to sort of adopt more libertarian beliefs in their lives in some way or another. So I think on the individual level, you can sort of get people to see your way. But at the end of the day, people believe what they believe because something moved them to believe it. They don't believe what they believe because someone logicked them into it. Even with like the Ron Paul days, like, man, like during those debates, during some of those rallies, like I felt like spiritually alive. I felt like I was at church for me, even though I didn't practice a religion, that was my religion. I would go to Ron Paul church. I would go to rallies and we would chant our hymns, our End the Fed. And I mean, to me, that was like me practicing. I didn't think of it this way at the time at all. But looking back, it's really no different than anybody else going to their actual church and singing hymns or doing whatever lifts their spirit and makes them feel closer to their community. Because that's ultimately what it is. It's religions are what binds people together, what binds societies and civilizations together. So your shared practices, your shared beliefs. And when you find people that have those shared practices, that's how the Ron Paul Revolution became, like, in many ways, a community, a community of people that help each other out, that ended up forming organizations together, starting podcasts together. And that's because they had a shared belief system. Now, maybe that belief system was a series of political positions, and maybe, or the belief system was like, this guy is so pure. I mean, like you said earlier, he really kind of is our Jesus, because the whole point of Jesus was this guy is like the perfect person to emulate. We should do things like he did. That's the best way to live your life. Right. And that was how we saw Ron Paul in the political sense. Like, if you're going to do politics, if you're going to be a politician, this is the way to do it purely, to speak truthfully, to have a 30-year track record of consistency and speaking truth to power. So, I mean, he really was like the Jesus of the Ron Paul Revolution. And I would have scoffed at that comparison at the time, but now I realize like it's really the only appropriate way to look at it, because it's the only truthful way to look at it.
Yeah, well, and that goes for every aspect of life, man. Like, go to a great metal concert and get in a mosh pit and tell me that you're not overcome by some sort of spirit. Like, there's something there, like there's something that's taking hold of you. You're not, a lot of times you get out of the pit, you don't even remember what happened, you don't know what was going on. And yeah, there's a lot of chaos in there, but still you're having the time of your life for 45 minutes, just beating the shit out of each other. And then you get out of there and you're like all hugging and drinking beer together. And you're like, man, that was awesome. If only I could remember, kind of deal. It's the feeling that you're engulfed in more so than the action that you're actually going through. And so it happens in so many different aspects of life that when you start, like you said earlier, when you start seeing it, you can't unsee it. You start like breaking down every little thing and going, okay, like, what is this? And how am I interacting with this? And how is this part of my life? How am I inviting it into my life? Like, how am I treating it in my life? All these different things. You start asking yourself all these questions. And it really makes you wonder. Like, one of the books I'm reading is The Language of Creation, Cosmic Symbolism in Genesis, right? And what they talk about in this book is what all these different things mean. So, like, let's just say, for instance, you have God separates the water from the water, then he separates the heavens from the earth, and then he separates man from woman. Okay? So you have the macro to the micro, right? So it's these bigger ideas, and it just eventually gets smaller. It cones down. And the man and the woman are symbols of heavens and the earth. And the heavens of the earth are symbols of separation of waters. So when it says something like, woman, submit to your husband, it's something along the lines of the way the church would submit to Christ, or a man would submit to the church, and therefore the woman submits to the man that way. And so when it says, man, love your wife, then it's the way that Christ would love the church, right? So you submit to the being that loves you in such a way they would never do anything to harm you, right? You're not submitting to harm. You're submitting to an entity that would never harm you. So when you start looking at that, you're looking at the macro and the micro and the way it's broken down and the way these patterns work out. You're like, okay, there's a higher and there's a lower, and there's got to be something higher than government. That can't be the highest. If that's the highest, we're in real shit. Right.
And for many on the the woke progressive left, you might say that is the highest. Just government is the highest, and it is the highest thing to look at. And I think for many, and that's the problem I think many libertarians have, is because when you're just fighting the state all the time and you're only yelling about the state and everything the state does is bad and everything private companies do is good, bro, then you're also making the government the highest by giving it that respect, by allowing that to be the center of your conversation. I think that is a mistake that I made for many years, and I think it's a mistake a lot of libertarians make to this day, including many I like and listen to. But I get cringe sometimes when I just hear the government does this, the government does that, the government does this other thing. The government doesn't do shit. The government is essentially a myth. I mean, the government is just the manifestation of what your friends, neighbors, family believe should be happening. It believes should be happening by some entity, and it happens to be this particular entity in this case. You remove that entity away, and you don't change the beliefs of those same people, it's back tomorrow. So why is that the focus? Why are you making it the God? Don't give it that respect. Don't give it that kind of authority.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you don't have to tell people like you and I what the government does. I mean, I have 20 fucking books on CIA operations. I have books on, Scott Horton's books on the wars. I have Imperial Hubris sitting over there. You don't have to tell me what the government does. I understand what the government does. What do
you do?
Yeah.
That's what people should be saying.
Well, and this is what I think I talked to John Odermatt about this whenever I was on his show. It's like, I always say, it's not what you do one day every 2 years. Speaking of voting, it's what you do with the rest of your life that actually matters. Yeah, like that's what really matters. And that's why I have chickens. That's why I have a greenhouse. That's why I garden. That's why I do these things. Like, because those are the things that are going to matter. I got a stocked pond. I got chickens and I got eggs. Like, all right, fine. The supply chain keeps breaking down. Then what? Well, I'm going to eat. I don't know about you.
Those are things that are going to matter both for your physical existence, as you are more immune to any problems that go on in the physical reality around you, and they're also things that probably like tend to your own soul in many ways. When you're caring for raising animals, kind of nurturing them, and raising, dealing with plants and vegetation and this sort of thing. I mean, that's an activity that brings worth to added worth to yourself as well. So it's a win-win on both planes.
Right, and I have less time to sit here and just run my mouth. I actually have to get out there and
take
do
you off
something
Twitter
every once in a while. But yeah, so that's my thing. Is like, if libertarians are against the state, then instead of aiming their perspective at the individual and at themselves, they need to find a higher priority to aim their perspective at. And this is why you have people saying, well, libertarianism is Christianity without Christ, because they're not aiming at anything bigger than the state. So then you get like your perspective where, well, according to libertarians, the state is the highest entity. It is God. Well, there are a lot of atheists that are atheists because they hate God. They believe in a God, but they hate God. Mm-hmm. So by saying I hate the state, you're not. It's
the most statist thing you can say.
Right. You're not going over the state's head. And I said this to you on your on a tweet you posted the other day. I was like, look, man, it's easy to be against something. It's really hard to take responsibility for your own actions and be for something. Yeah. And that's what you should. That's what's missing in libertarianism. Like, the theory's great. The economics are spot on. That's fantastic stuff. But where are the people, where are the elders of libertarianism, so to speak, talking about responsibility? Well,
I don't know if we can count on the elders, so we're going to need some fresh blood here.
Well, right, but it's built into their lives. It's built into their lives.
Well, yeah, hating the state is a brand for many people. So if you're going to, you can't really pivot off what's not that there are that many libertarians aren't great grifters. Let's be honest. If you're going to grift, you're going to go, you're going to go to like Turning Point USA or something like that.
That's where the money is. Yeah. But but it's built into their lives. Like you would never question whether Tom Woods is taking care of his children, and I think, I do a lot of stuff on parenthood and relationships and responsibility. But when Dave Smith released that episode the other day about his child being born, like, that meant a lot, because I was like, there's somebody that people are like admiring that they can listen to and say, oh shit, okay, there's more to life than just my rights, my rights, my rights. Yeah, but what are your responsibilities? You may have rights, but you don't get those rights without having responsibilities. And you better own up to those responsibilities. And I think that's what Christianity adds to the conversation.
That's pretty much what the left wants, with the progressive woke left, I guess, at least. I mean, they want a world of rights for everything. Everything is a right and zero responsibility. So you don't want to, if you're going to play into that narrative, you're just moving more to the left. You're just moving more towards their worldview when you're speaking on that same level. And I think a lot of libertarians just fall into this trap of playing the game of their enemies. And when you play the game, you kind of accept the rules. And when you accept the rules, you've already boxed yourself into their version of reality, to their version of to their way of seeing the world, where we got to be thinking on such a higher level. We have to be changing the way people view the world, not just jumping into the way that, the people that don't see things the way we do see their world. Because then we're accepting it. We're accepting their gods. We're saying, yes, this is the correct belief system. We're just mad about these 7 things you're doing.
Right. Yeah, no, and that's absolutely the wrong way to go about it. Because if you're... See, I think this is part of the reason that, like, the Branch Davidians were attacked. I think it wasn't so much them breaking gun laws or this, that, and the other. They worshipped a higher being than the state. Mm-hmm. Whether that was the true God or whatever, they were focused on it being bigger than the state. And they were submissive to it before they were submissive to the state. And you see this with all martyrs of the past, right? Like, what did they say? Well, they were saying the authority that I worship, that I submit to, is bigger than you. So nothing you can do to me is going to make me move, because it's much bigger than you are.
So much of the focus of my podcast is to point out abuses of power and how bad things have gotten and the direction in which we're heading as a society. And it can be a real black pill. I've partnered up with Richard Grove to offer my listeners an opportunity to sign up to his Autonomy Course. The Autonomy Course is designed for people looking for solutions, people that want to shape their own future, people that are not willing to be at the behest of large corporations or the United States government or the banking system. The Autonomy Course is designed for those of you who wish to have complete control of the reins of your life, who are looking to be successful, that to thrive and not just survive, to provide for your family by utilizing your existing skills and learning how to market and sell those skills in order to be your own boss, or learn new skills in order to leverage that into a new career opportunity. So if there's a job out there you've been trying to get or you've been wishing you could get, but you just don't have the skills for it, the Autonomy Course is the place for you to start, to learn how to land that position, to learn how to market yourself better, to gain confidence, and to be surrounded by a community of like-minded people that will encourage you and help you along the way. So use my affiliate links and go check out the Autonomy Course. It could be right for you.
And I personally can say that I see a very direct correlation nowadays with people of either faith or like some kind of stronger spirit, who, when it comes to like a lot of these vaccine mandates, especially in the libertarian community, when there first were chirps about this stuff, everyone's against it. But when it gets a little convenient not to do it, suddenly you see people doing it. And to me, the people that you see caving very quickly, actually, as soon as the slightest inconvenience comes up, are the people that seem to me, and this is my outward view, I mean, I'm not like judging anybody here, but they seem to have less of that faithful foundation. They seem to be more tied to the material world, more tied to, I don't want to inconvenience my material life here, because that's what there really is, and this is what matters the most. Whereas people that are more grounded in either a certain religion or just have a different view on spirituality, those are more people that I'm seeing that are like, no, I'm never going to take it. I'm not, or not if I don't want to anyway. And I don't care what material worldly possessions are threatened by that. I don't care if my 6-figure salary is taken from me, because I'm going to do what's right, because I don't answer to these people. I don't answer to anybody on this plane. Yeah. And that's an attitude that I think taken over the last couple of years, even though I can't say like I'm a Buddhist, I'm an Orthodox, anything. Like I've taken a lot of things from other religions that I find value in. Right. And I kind of continue to explore that. But I do think that I do have a strong faith that there is something there and something bigger. And maybe I don't have it all spelled out in the exact right way. But to me, I have a faith that if all this stuff was happening 3 or 4 years ago, I might be in a totally different situation, and maybe that situation would be more materially advantageous. I would probably have a higher salary, but I don't think I'd be in as good of a place, and I don't think I'd be on the right path. So, and I don't think it's a coincidence that I sort of found more of a spiritual strength at this point in time. I don't think it's a coincidence that I met my wife like right around before this stuff started happening. I don't really think that stuff like this happens coincidentally. So, I think I'm prepared for these times, not because I'm in an amazing financial situation, not because I've done everything I should do, but because my spirit is a lot stronger, and I'm not going to cave to things that I would have caved to if I was in a different place in terms of that.
What do you credit for that? Like what put you in that mindset?
That is a really good question, because I don't know if it's any one thing. Like I can definitely say like having a family, like, you know, I got married last year, and I have a stepson who's like completely embraced me as part of his family. And while I don't have birth children of my own, like I definitely have that sort of feeling that this physical family here kind of represents something even bigger than any of that. And I mean, I would do anything for them at all. I would step in front of a bus to protect them from that bus. And that's not something I've ever felt about anyone or anything before. So I think just that alone changes my outlook on a lot of things, you know, because while there are things I might do to myself, you know, I might, you know, screw it, I'm going to go drink a lot on Friday night, and I know I'm going to be hungover, but I'm just going to do that to myself. I can handle it, you know. But I would never do things to a child, like, you know, I would never. So when I look at the systems being put in place today, and I'm looking at these mandates coming in, yeah, maybe if I was single and on my own and I didn't have something else that mattered to me, maybe I would be like, screw it, I'll just take the stupid thing, I'll follow these rules. It's going to make my life a little easier, right? But if I do that now I'm actually enslaving another generation into it. Because if I go along with this, yeah, my stepson's going to go along with it. His generation's going to go along with it, because that's going to be what they've seen. That is going to be the only thing they ever knew. So that alone is something that makes me look at everything differently. But as far as spirituality, I mean, like I said, I've always been like fascinated by religion, and for whatever reason, in maybe the 2 or 3 years prior to even COVID hitting, I started to take more interest in religious ideas. And I started to just kind of experiment with some things more, like try to get into meditation. I don't know. I think there was probably an inner desire for me. Maybe it's not a coincidence. I'm kind of working out this live in the interview here. Like maybe it does tie into the whole Ron Paul thing. Because, you know, that was like my life from like 2007 to maybe 2012. And then that kind of faded away. And then maybe we thought it was maybe still going, because maybe Rand's going to run, and then he runs and everyone's excited. And then like quickly you realize like, oh, this is not the same thing. This is good. He's good for what he is, but it's not the same thing. Right. It's not the same thing at all. So I'm now kind of putting that timeline together, because it's probably not a coincidence that as that Ron Paul revolution sort of era of my life faded away is when I was maybe seeking something else, and when I was looking for meaning elsewhere. So maybe that is why I started to take more interest in these things around that time. It's like a therapy session right here. I'm sorting out my own issues. Yeah. So I mean, I think I'm just exploring.
I'm trying to match Buck Johnson's interview style.
This is why I'm friends with podcasters. You know, this is where I get to work out all my stuff, you know, because I don't feel like going to therapists and talking to strangers. I just talk to strangers that I've met on the internet, strangers I've tweeted with, basically. But yeah, I mean, that's probably where a lot of it started, and then, you know, just meeting my wife was a part of that too. She has definitely her own, you know, version of spirituality as well. So, and she's super into a lot of things, you know, in the spiritual realm, I guess you might say, we can put it that way. So, and then you combine that with a few psychedelic experiences, combine those psychedelic experiences with having similar feelings at times on a couple different occasions of when I've had like a more psychedelically induced spiritual moment, but feeling that even when I'm not on the psychedelic is what kind of says, okay, maybe it's not just the psychedelic that did it. Maybe it's psychedelic that might have opened me in those moments, but maybe this is actually something we can access in other ways. And the more I research things like this too, like researching the work of like Graham Hancock, I mean, like the spiritual realm is something that has been accessed in many different ways over tens of thousands of years from every society imaginable. So many of them did it with psychedelics, many of them did it with smoke ceremonies, and many did it with just chanting. I mean, and meditation. I mean, these are all ways that civilizations and over the years have accessed another realm, if you will. And I call it a realm because it's like just our earthly language. Like I'm not even saying I can even describe what this really is, but it's hard. It would be hard for me to deny after having a number of experiences, and that that it is not something real in some sense. And maybe that realness is just in my own consciousness. Maybe that is and maybe we have some sort of collective consciousness that we can all sort of access. Like, I don't really know what it is. Some people call it God. Some people call it the universe. But I believe in it in some sense, whatever that it is.
There was this really interesting book that Clive Barker wrote years ago called Mr. Begone. And it's written from the first person as of a demon who comes up from hell, and he's taking you through his journeys on Earth, and you don't know what his ultimate goal is, but you're following along because it's interesting. And then you find out towards the end of the book that what is happening is he was called up from hell to stop the angels. Him and many other demons were called up from hell to stop the angels from getting a hold of the printing press before the demons could get it. And it's a really interesting read. It's not very long. It's about 140 pages. And it makes me wonder. It's one of those things I look at whenever I look at like biblical stories, right? I look at the story of Adam and Eve, where what caused the fall of man was the knowledge of good and evil, right? Or if you look at in Genesis, I think it's Genesis 6, it talks about the Nephilim and the angels that wanted to come upon human woman. And then apparently they started teaching humans all sorts of secrets of the angels. And there's this trajectory within Christianity where knowledge is a bad thing in certain ways, right? Like you're chasing the wrong knowledge maybe, and it's leading you down the wrong path. It's leading you to the wrong position. And I'm wondering with libertarians specifically, if there's a blockade from experiencing the spiritual because of the focus on the analytical and on that which you can read in a book and not experience in life.
Yeah, I think very much so. I mean, I think libertarians are often so focused on the logic and the reason, as understandably, because I think, the positions are the logical and reasonable ones. Of course, I think that because I'm a believer, but that's the kind of the point. I mean, the belief has to come first, like we'll take a belief and we'll logic our way back into it. We'll go backwards. So I think when libertarians try to approach everything from the logical point of view, from the rational point of view, and this sounds so counterintuitive. And I think that's why, and I'm not preaching here, and I'm trying not to anyway. I'm talking to my younger self in many ways. I've been around the block on this thing for a while now. And I know there are a lot of people that have come into this movement in the last 3 or 4 years. So when I talk about this stuff, I guess I just hope to influence them a little bit and maybe let them skip a decade of stuff that I went to, or maybe 8 or 9 years of me, I think, having the wrong approach to things and banging my head against the wall and not understanding why people just can't see the truth. It's so obvious. 1 + 1 = 2. What more is there to know? But no one has ever been.
I repeat that saying my grandpa used to always tell me: a wise man learns from other people's mistakes, and a smart man learns from his own mistakes. Yeah. And sometimes some of us are so smart it smarts. So.
Mm-hmm. And it's hard to look at your past self, and especially if it's the recent past, and say I was wrong. So I think a lot of libertarians have doubled and tripled and quadrupled down on not just their strategy, but the way they look at things, the way they speak, whatever particular political path they've chosen, so that if it ever gets questioned, not even criticized, just questioned, then they can have that same reaction that someone would have to having their religious beliefs questioned. And again, once you see this, it's hard to unsee it. So I see a lot of these things, and I know this because I used to react react in the same way. When, I was, one of those hardcore angry ANCAPs who would just go out at a rant if anybody that would question, that's the perfect system or that's the perfect way or whatever. And I would just be, oh, well, you're a statist, you're a heathen. You might as well say the same thing. When you're telling someone they're a statist, you're telling them that you're a heathen who doesn't believe in your religion. Right. And I was like that too. So again, I'm preaching to myself. I'm preaching to young Mark here. But I think we have to realize that if we just attack people's belief systems, we're not going to get anywhere. Then we're the heathen to them, they're the heathen to us, and nothing's going to change. So what we have to, I think, realize in some way, shape, or form is just accept the reality of our reality, that people are moved in other ways, that people are moved by myth, that people are moved by shared experiences. So maybe we need to get a little bit more into those shared experiences and into creating more of a religious movement of our own, I guess. But how do you do that? How do you call libertarianism the religion? Well, what's going to move people? What's the myth around that?
Orthodox libertarianism.
And that's why a lot of people say, do we need to create a new religion, or should we just have people follow the tenets of the existing religions that they already mostly believe in? So because if you actually follow Christ, or you actually, live life like a Buddhist or like a Hindu, or really like any religion really describes. And I think for a long time, I was so against religion because I saw so many people of a religious ilk not acting in a good way and confusing the religiousness of it, the spirituality of it with how certain people act. Well, the fact is a lot of people name themselves things and don't act in those ways. That might even be the majority of Christians. That might even be the majority of Jews or Muslims or whatever that don't live in the way that they preach, But that doesn't mean that the teachings are wrong. That just means that the people aren't on the right path, or that they're veering off, because we're all humans anyway. So of course we're all going to veer off. That's kind of the whole point of like original sin, right? Like we're not perfect. We can't be perfect, but we can try. We can aim in the right way. We can aim for the right mark, and if we aim for the right mark, well, at least we'll be in the right direction. But if we aim for the opposite direction, we aim for Satanism or whatever, to kind of use the analogies here, if we aim for that, well, then we're going to be a lot farther away from actually hitting the mark.
Yeah, no, for sure. You brought up something a while ago, and this is something that I am constantly struggling with. Is you brought up the word belief, and you said you have to believe before you understand. And it's something I've actually emailed Cyprian about and chatted with him about, because I was raised Southern Baptist. This was something that I always dealt with, was like I knew mentally, I knew the stories. I knew what I was supposed to know to be a Christian, right? But I never lived it. I never believed it. I never... Right. It never exposed itself. It never exposed itself in my life. It was just, I could repeat it and I could tell you all day long, but it was never belief. Yeah. And one of the things I struggle with is, if these stories are true, as much as I like the stories and I'd like to believe they are true, how do you believe they are true? That's where I'm caught up. That's where my mind is at the moment. And it has been for many years. It's okay, if this is true, how do I believe it is true? Like, how do I get to there? Like, I get I've never reverted beyond agnostic because of certain experiences in my life, but I've never gotten to that place to where I can say without a shadow of a doubt, yes, I believe this. It's just never been one of those places I could get to.
Yeah, it's a kind of a funny thing about belief. It's like you are always going to, at the end of the day, if you're going to really believe something, you're going to take a leap of faith, because you're not going to really know in the normal intellectual way. So I think that's kind of the definition of faith. But to me, and obviously people have different perspectives on this stuff. To me, it's like, I don't know if any specific story is true. When I talked to Cyprian, I think the last time I interviewed him, I asked point blankly, do you actually believe the Bible is true literally? And he said yes. He actually does believe these are true stories. Like, and everything that happened in the New Testament is exactly what happened, or maybe not exactly, but as told through various people, like it is more or less represented.
As close as they could be represented.
Right. Yeah. Of course, no story or no version of history is the truth. It's just someone's version. We're hoping to compile enough versions that we can kind of have an idea of what really happened. Exactly. But to me, I don't know if it matters. I think we need to maybe let go of what's true in a literal sense and just worry more about if there's truth in it, if it is expressing something true. So are the lessons true? Are what you get out of the story true? And I don't know if you need to believe that the story literally happened. Maybe it helps, maybe, again, I'm speaking this from someone who's going through my own process on this stuff. Like for example, the Mahabharata, I think it's called Mahabharata. It's basically like the collection of stories of like the Hindu religion, and the Bhagavad Gita is like a portion of that. But this is like this whole Mahabharata is like a greater description of this grand war involving kings and various families feuding over power and gods and laser weapons and freaking crazy shit, man, like space shit, lasers and all this stuff. And if you ask like a devout Hindu if they believe it happened, if they believe it literally occurred, like, I'm not going to speak for every Hindu, this is something I've heard some people say, like they'll say like, well, I don't believe it to not be true. You can have faith that it's true and you can live your life believing it, but you also would have to have faith in another way that it's a leap of faith to say this is definitely not true either. This definitely didn't happen. How do you know? I don't know what happened. Like the 100. These are stories about stories about stories about stories. Who knows what was going on in this plane of reality 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 years ago? I have no freaking idea. Maybe it's all freaking true. Maybe it literally happened. I can't say it didn't either. So I think it's arrogance either way to say you definitely know. So, and I think that's what can turn a lot of people off of religions, maybe. But, to me, at the end of the day, it's like, what do the stories mean? Why do the stories move people? Why have those stories stuck around for so long? And I think at the end of the day, the stories that stick around the longest they stick around because there's truth in the stories. The story is what's true, even if it's not true in a factual sense necessarily. Right. Yeah. It's the story of mankind. It's the story of life, whatever you want to call it. And I think that's the same reason that those stories, in a sense, the ones that tell that similar story are the ones that make the most money at the box office. Why is Harry Potter so freaking successful? Why is Lord of the Rings so successful? Why are the Marvel movies so successful? Because I think they're the best at capturing that story in a very modernized form, in a form that no one is going to say this happened, but who knows? Maybe in 10,000 years, people read the Harry Potter books and they're like, this shit might have happened, like, I don't know. Right. But if they're getting the same thing out of the stories, and the story moves them and the story maybe helps them see something that's true and a better way to live. Like, I don't know. I'm not saying that like you should model your life after Harry Potter, but I'm not saying you shouldn't. Like, like he always pretty much does the right thing, even though he falters a lot along the way. And I never expected to go too in depth on Harry Potter on this show or any show, but I mean, I think that's why you see these very successful franchises and you see them in the ones that carry out this myth of mankind, to the closest way possible and the most entertaining way possible. Obviously, budgets and stuff are a factor too here. Yeah,
don't throw the baby out with the bathwater for sure. That's one of my mottos. Like you can be an atheist, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater because there's something there. And it's a pretty interesting experience. Sitting down with an atheist and listening to like the Jordan Peterson, biblical chats, stuff like that. Yeah. And just to see their expression and their reaction to it and going, wow, okay, like I kind of see where he's going with this. Like
that's kind of part of my evolution on this stuff too. Actually, I got into a lot of Jordan Peterson stuff. I came upon him in a lot of the same ways other people did. And I actually interviewed him on Lions of Liberty and then kind of dug into his work more. And I took a lot of that same message out of that too, like his breakdowns of how the Bible stories kind of just tell the story of mankind and the kind of lessons you can learn from them. Like that really made me look at it in a different way. So it's a good bridge to the spiritual, maybe, when you can at least start to respect the stories first before you actually maybe add another spiritual layer, which I'm not sure if Jordan Peterson has gone beyond that. I think he kind of stops at interpreting these stories as if they could be true. He even says, like, I don't necessarily believe they're true. I just live my life as if it's true, which I think is, it's different than some people that might have that full faith, so to speak.
Right.
But I think he's definitely a interesting gap bridger for some. He definitely was for me.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And that's an interesting way to go about it. What I think is really important about it is that it is giving you a higher. And see, that's something I keep coming back to always in my mind is what is that higher? Like, what is the higher? If the government is the highest, then you're just going to keep fighting against, stormtroopers for the rest of your life. That's like, that's the way you want to live your life,
That doesn't sound like a fun way to live to me.
Exactly.
Constantly fighting something that you can't fight because it's your fucking God.
Yeah, exactly. And I just can't bring myself to give the government that kind of respect. So it's like, so to me, it's very difficult. But let's move a little bit. I'm not going to keep you too much longer because we've already been. Oh shit, we're already an hour. But
good.
So let's move a little bit. I don't even know what to call the subject here. Some people call it post-libertarianism. Some people call it Praxianism. I just look at it and go, okay, these are people that have read a lot talking about interesting ideas. That's kind of the way I look at it. So it's caused a lot of friction here recently. And I think it's because there are some of us that are a little bit older that are saying, yeah, you might be right. You might be right. Because I was 20 at one time and was ideological and it did nothing for me. So you might be right. And it was kind of the reason I turned to a more agorist kind of state of mind, started, farming and not really farming, but gardening and raising chickens and, all this other stuff was because, okay, yeah, this theory gets me so far, but it doesn't solve any of my problems that I actually have to deal with. It seems to me what we're experiencing at this point are some very intelligent people trying to figure out a way to take the theory of libertarianism that they have really enjoyed and fallen in love with over their life and turn it into action. And I don't understand why there are some people that have a problem with that. Are you any more keyed into that than I am?
Well, it's hard for me to say I'm not keyed into it at this point. When I appeared on Pete's show, Free Man Beyond the Wall, last week, and some people say I outed myself as a post-libertarian in that interview. To me, I've always been... Okay,
I didn't hear that. I did listen to the show. I didn't hear that.
You got to do your homework. All right. Maybe we'll have to do a follow-up show after you go listen to that. But, I didn't use that term, but, I find myself agreeing not with, there's a lot of guys that I think now the label is like a pejorative, which is why I don't want to take a label. Like, I'm not rejecting libertarianism per se. I'm not, I'm not changing my stance. I'm on a constant evolution and I'm constantly trying to look at things and find the truth of things. And I think like libertarianism is a true moral philosophy. Like it is the way we should live. And so I've argued for that for so long, but I think before this whole COVID thing, it was still, yes, I was passionate about it. Yes, I wanted to end the wars. I want to end end the Fed, all of that stuff. And to me, it's like it still felt a little bit. At the time, it seemed like it mattered a lot, but now looking back at things compared to now, that seemed like a game. That was just the game. We're just playing politics here. We're just telling people what we believe. We're trying to get people on our side. Maybe we'll join the Libertarian Party. Who cares that it's a small party that's never going to be able to do anything? Because this is just fun. This is politics. I'm making friends. I'm having fun. We're talking about the things we agree on. We're reading Rothbard. This is all great. This is a little club we're in. But after the last 2 years, I can't really look at this as just like a thing I do anymore. And I think for a long time, I tried to really view myself as like this like unbiased moderator of the libertarian world, and I host debates and I am unbiased when it comes to like moderating debates, or at least I try to be. And I enjoy doing that. But I think after these last couple of years, and especially, I know how many people have listened to Lions of Liberty over the years. I know how many fans we have. I know how many people like follow us in some way. Not like they do what we tell them to. We don't tell people what to do at all. But that that take what they hear from us and take some kind of action from it. And I know that, I don't know, I have like this, I feel like a Spider-Man here, you know, I have that sort of feeling now of like this great power comes with great responsibility. Yeah. So if I have this platform and I have this microphone and people sort of, you know, take, not that they do what we say lockstep, but like they are influenced just like they're influenced by so many other things in their life. I started to think to myself, like, what am I influencing people to do? Like, am I just influencing them to, and because we have people that write to us and tell us like, you encouraged me to do this, that, and now I spend all this time in the Libertarian Party. And then I think to myself, is that what they should be doing in 2021? Did I make them do the right thing? So maybe I need to actually talk about more what I think the right thing is to do. Like, I don't know what the right thing for anybody to do is. And I can just tell you my experience and what I'm seeing and what I'm discovering. But for me, it's becoming harder to stay unbiased when this is affecting our lives so much. And when I see so many libertarians just going along with it still, just going along with this, what everything that's happening, even if they say we're anti, we will not comply until my flight to this place is threatened or until I can't go to this concert, then I will immediately. That's really what I see. And I can't just sit by and just act like this is fine anymore. I can't sit by and just act like it's okay for us to just plug around in a third party, dick each other off and joke about how great fucking Rothbard is. And then while the world burns around us. So right. And it's not like I don't quote unquote agree with all the people that are being called post-libertarians, but I agree that they're having the correct conversations and they're asking the right questions and they're trying to actually create some kind of better world for themselves and others. So if we can take the concepts and the principles of liberty and actually get them to apply to our real world through, whether it's through political action, whether it's through, I don't really care if it's through a governor, a governor banning vaccine mandates or vaccine passports, fine. I don't care. And if that makes me a post-libertarian or something, okay. If you think that makes me still a libertarian, okay. I don't care what anybody calls me at this point. I just want to get to I want to get on the right path for myself personally, first of all. And I hope others do that too. I think that's really the agorist sort of method, I guess, is in many ways, like, it's like step one, whether it's the Jason Stapleton wealth power influence, like, take on it, or whether it's more like the Vin Armani take on it. Like, these are all Sal the Agorist. These are all different aspects of the same thing. It's making yourself independent, making yourself financially free. And when I see people pouring so much time and effort who openly admit, like, I see people that are heavily involved in the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus or just Libertarian Party in general, that I know for a fact spend 20, 30, 40 hours a week on this stuff. And then I see them say, oh, I can't go to this, I'm broke. Okay, so now I'm not saying it's always a choice. Some people have that set, and maybe you can go spend your time on a political party. But man, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart to see people that can't refuse a vaccine mandate because they're broke, but they're spending 20 or 30 hours a week on frankly fruitless efforts. And yeah. I can't sit by while I watch people do that and not at least say, well, maybe you should consider another path.
One of the hardest lessons it was for me to learn was you can't help yourself and you can't help anybody else until you help yourself. Yeah. And
we learn it the first time we go on an airplane, man. Put your own face mask on first. Put your own air mask on first. If you can't breathe, you can't help the person next to you.
Dude, the first time I went on an airplane, I was nervous because I was going to basic training. I wasn't paying attention to those people.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you probably had a few different things on your mind about that.
Yeah. I was like, what the hell am I doing? What did I just do? They're about to send me to die. But no, yeah, no, and that was something my parents drilled into my head, and it was taking on some responsibilities that I had no business taking on, and learning that the hard way. That actually drilled it in, to the core. I actually had to learn that the hard way, and so anytime I look at the Libertarian Party, I look at a lot of people. There are a lot of people out there that want to do for others that can't do for themselves.
Yeah.
And I just look at it and I'm like, this is no way to succeed at anything. I don't care what your idea of success is. Mm-hmm. You're causing yourself a lot of heartache. You're causing yourself a lot of grief and a lot of strife because you haven't even learned how to care for yourself yet.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think we need to really be focusing on either helping ourselves or helping others try to get ourselves in a better position so that when mandates that you don't want to comply with come, or that you claim to not want to comply with come, you can actually do something about it. You can actually maybe pick up and go to a different city that doesn't have vaccine passports. You can actually walk away from your 6-figure job because you don't need the next paycheck just to survive. Right. If you're not already in that position, then at least get yourself there first. At least get yourself where you have 6 months to live. If you lose your income, heck, you should do that anyway. Like non-politically, everybody should try to get themselves first. And if you're spending 20 or 30 weeks, toiling away in a third party while broke, then I think you're focusing on the wrong things, because then you're actually putting yourself in a weaker position. You're not going to be able to help other people because you're going to be in a bad position. You're one paycheck away from losing all your liberty, because you have no liberty if you can't take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. So that's just, everyone can do their own thing, man. I'm not going to say you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't be involved in this, you shouldn't take this path. All I can say is what I see and give my thoughts on it, and if people think that makes me an asshole, then fine. Okay. But I do hope that, I hope I've got some credibility after, I've been reading Ron Paul since the year 2000. I broke into this movement in 2007, 2008. I'm the freaking OG libertarian podcaster, motherfucker. Damn straight you are. So, I like to think that after having so many conversations over the years, that maybe I have learned a thing or two. So, I hope other people might take some of the things that I've learned and take something from them. And if they don't, that's okay too. Whatever.
Yeah, I kind of feel shitty about asking about post-libertarianism too, because I always consider you unbiased. So I'm like, I can talk to him about this and nobody's going to get him mad. No, I like talking about everything, so nothing's off limits. Yeah, no, that's cool. I didn't figure you minded, but I don't want to get you yelled at. No,
I don't care at all. I don't care at all. And anybody who, whatever. Like, that's the thing. That's the thing about having. It kind of goes back to the spiritual thing. Like I don't really care. Like, I used to care a lot what other people think of me. And it's not that I don't care. Like, of course, I'm like an inner human. If I see 10 likes, I get 10 likes after I tweeted something out in the first minute, I'm like, whoa, I get the dopamine hit too. I'm human. I like to be liked, of course. Right. But I try not to. And again, I'm human. It's where I aim. It doesn't mean I'm perfect, but I try not to let that influence what I say or what I do or my actions. I'm trying to really just say things that I see as true and show people my experience, tell people what I'm learning from my experience here. And maybe the things I'm learning in 5 years, I look back at them and think, what an idiot, so I'm totally open to that. Maybe in 10 years, I'll think the guy from the 5 years ago was the idiot, and I probably will, and hopefully I do, because that means we're learning and evolving. Yeah, if we think the same way we thought 20 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that should be everybody's goal. And I think, I think we'll leave it here. But one of the stories that really struck me was out of Luke, whenever Jesus was arguing with one of the Pharisees, and he's telling the Pharisee, like, you think you're keeping the Sabbath. You're not keeping the Sabbath. Like, you're completely missing the point of the Sabbath. And I think what he was getting at, and this is the way I took it, is you are so holier than thou, and you have such a chip on your shoulder because these laws you wrote down that are apparently helping you maintain the Torah are really hindering your ability to be what God intended you to be. And by doing miracles on the Sabbath, you're trying to persecute me, when in actuality, I'm doing what was intended. And there are a lot of people that get into this rut of believing they've arrived, when what they really should be doing is repenting.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I say this as someone who definitely had that attitude for a long time. Oh, I've arrived. I got it all figured out now. I found libertarianism. I read Rothbard. There's nothing you could say to me anymore. Read Rothbard, or read Mises, not Marx. Read what I say. Don't read what the other people say. I say read everything. If you really want to get to the truth, read every perspective. And there's never, if you're ever at the point where you think you got it figured out, I guarantee you don't have it figured out. That's how I know. The fact that you know is how I know you don't, because you can't. Again, we can never be perfect. Like, we can never have the the exact overall truth, the exact right way for everyone to do everything. We can only try to aim as close to that mark as possible. And I think, and that's all I'm trying to do. And I'm always trying to find the truth. This is something, I interviewed my dad like early on in my podcast, and he told me that, you know, even when I was like a little kid, whenever they'd tell me to do something or ask something of me, I would always ask why. And then if I didn't like that answer, I'd no, like really why? Like that's bullshit. And maybe I wouldn't say bullshit when I was like 7, but you know, I would never take the first answer at face value, and I would never relent until I got to the truth, or what I thought was the truth, or the closest I was going to get. And I think that's the same attitude I take now, the same attitude I've always taken. I think I'm being a little more vocal now because I just feel more of the responsibility. Like I feel like I can't just sit by and be Mr. Happy Unbiased while the world fucking burns around me, while people are getting needles stuck in their arms that claim they don't want them because they're not going to be able to eat tomorrow if they don't take that needle in their arm. So I don't want people to be in that position, and I can't just sit by and act like it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think as podcasters, we had a choice when COVID came around, and our choices were to shut down the podcast or to actually speak up. That was it. Those were the only two choices we had.
And I'll admit, I was in like a weird position because I had when it first started, I had gotten. Sometimes I go in batches where I'll record like weeks of a podcast at a time because then I got stuff to do. So I was actually like. I was pretty much on like a 2 or 3 week trip to Mexico, actually, at the time with my not yet wife. So I had like weeks of podcasts already edited, scheduled, published, all this stuff. So like my first few weeks of podcasts after COVID, it's not mentioned. And like I look back and I look at the dates and I'm like, it's kind of cringe. I'm like, I don't know, bringing this thing up, but I'm like, hey, I'm out dealing with my world. I'm not even like thinking about my podcast. And it was like after I started coming back and it seemed like there still wasn't that many people talking about it when I started recording again, until it was not very far into it that it really was like a lot of Pete's early interviews with Cyprian, with Vin, and that really got me like out of a little bit of my cognitive dissonance, because I think even I was trying to be like, this is fine, you know, the meme with the dog in the kitchen and everything's burning around. This is fine. Those podcasts will just air, and by the time I start recording again, this thing will probably be blown over, right? Like, you know, even though I know that's not true, I'm sort of telling myself this. And I think, you know, Vin really put so much out there that like when he spoke about what's coming and what's going on, like I just knew it was true, you know, like it moved my spirit in the way I said, like, this isn't what I want to think is happening, but it's kind of what I know is happening. And that was almost, that was a year and a half ago. And then I brought him on Lions of Liberty and, had a few shows with him diving into this stuff. And it just, I think that is a lot of part of what led me on this current path and this current way of thinking as well. A lot of his influence, really, and just not that I don't agree with all his takes on everything, of course, but I mean that just the way that he, like, when you see someone call something correct for 2 years, maybe you're going to take them some of what they say a little bit seriously,
right?
So,
exactly.
It's kind of hard.
I didn't talk a lot about COVID. I had Dr. James Lyons Weiland on, and I had a couple of other guys on. But I've not really focused a whole lot on it because there are so many podcasters focused on it. And I really want to talk to people about what they can do today in their own lives and not worry so much about that. Like, okay, like ignore what's going on over there. Take care of yourself. Like, how can you take care of yourself? What can you do? Like to set yourself up, situate yourself, put yourself in a position to where when they come knocking on your door, or when they tell you can't enter the grocery store, or when they tell you, whatever, you don't have a job anymore, that you're in a better position. And so that's really what I've tried to focus on without so much focusing on COVID. And part of it is because I just got bored of the conversation very early. I was like, I don't know anything about science. I don't know anything about illness. I don't care. Dude, it's a flu. I'll get over it. Let's go. Like, I got work to do. I don't have time to sit here and fatigue and worry and duress on this particular subject for years. But I'm glad Pete and Tom Woods and those that did stick with the subject and gathered all this information did what they did, because
for sure.
I wasn't the person to do that, but I'm glad they were able to do it so I can access that information. So.
Indeed.
But hey, plug away, man. We've been going for a little while here. I knew we would. Wish it would have been a little more up spirit because I would have liked to laugh a little bit more today. But
I'll do my best next time. Next time, bring me on and talk about comics.
it's probably my fault because I chose the subject. So I'm not going to blame you. But yeah, plug away, dude. Like nobody knows where to find you.
Yeah, all the standard stuff, lionsliberty.com and at lionsliberty on Twitter. My personal Twitter is at Marc D. Clair. That's Mark with a C, the letter D, Clair, Clair. That is where I say stuff. I also have a Substack now that I'm writing. You can just find that at markclair.substack.com. I also have another podcast, which we didn't get into, but it's a very non-political podcast, intentionally speaking. It was a product of the pandemic, however, though. It is a little comic book podcast that I do with my friend Remzo Martinez called the Second Print Comics Podcast. If you are into comics, definitely check it out. If you're not into comics and you like us, maybe check it out anyway, because we really have fun conversations and we have a good time. You might find yourself liking things you didn't even know you would like, and it's for me, it's like much needed therapy. Like it's my time away from politics, and it's even though we are who we are, we're both libertarians, so of course. If you are of our ilk and you hear these episodes, you'll hear some of that leak into our interpretations of things, of course, because we are who we are. So it's definitely not a libertarian comic book podcast, but it is a comic book podcast by two libertarians. So it becomes what it is. So that's a Second Print Comics. Secondprintcomics.com is the best way to find everything there.
That's cool, man. I'll put everything in the show notes too. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, brother. It's been real.
We're going to do this again.
Right now, you weren't recording that?
If you're gonna play this game of pick and choose, well, it's a game that was made for you to lose. It doesn't really matter how many times, it's the same old worn out stories, same old lines. They're all pointing dirty fingers in hypocrisy, bragging on their feats of mediocrity again. Never really making any kind of change, but they keep on getting re-elected, and I find that strange. And that's why I say fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants that have taken our freedoms. Yeah, I said fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants that have taken our freedoms. What's it gonna take for you to see that we're living in a rigged democracy? People stand in line for the things that they've been choosing, paying no attention to the rights they keep on losing. But they all gather in the rallies and they chant their names on goddamn well that it's all gonna be the same. Just 4 more years of war and taxes, 4 more years of them grinding down their axes. And that's why I say fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants that have taken our freedoms. Yeah, fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them.